Your mind being muted. Are you talking?
Yeah. Oops. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I was saying, thanks guys for joining us. For those of you that could, and for those of you who end up watching recording, thanks for taking the time to listen to what we have to say. Hopefully, we can kind of go through this. This is just an update from our talk from last year. We like that it's an annual thing, and you know it's received some good feedback. So hopefully, we'll continue to do it. We've essentially want to go through the match statistics and kind of give you a sense of what the numbers game that you guys are playing is, and you know, in orthopedics, the numbers are crucial. And then we're going to talk just about a little bit of advice maybe that we can give you, and then you know get some feedback from the crowd in terms of questions that you'd like answered, things that are still they're still in question. I like that Paul is here with us. I really appreciate you for joining us. He's of course most recently through the whole process, so he knows it better than you know myself and Todd, who are a few years removed now. Of course, some things stay true, but other things are you know some of the nuance is important as well. So this is this is just a statement from Todd last year, and the last PowerPoint. You know, some of these
Don't worry, I don't see your screen anymore. Am I just missing something? Oh, found it. Never mind.
Okay, yeah. So some of the some of the stats will make you feel ill. I mean that's always been the case in orthopedics. It's kind of a very, you know, very competitive, and so sometimes, you know, it can make you nervous, can make you feel, you know, am I ready? Am I gonna be able to do it? But probably the most important thing is it's, you know, you're speaking to people who have done it, and it is possible, and we're hopefully we're gonna help you get some give you some advice to help you beat the odds and beat the stats. So probably most important things, deadlines. Like if, you know, I think our the ABOS president came to us the other day and gave us a talk, and he said that the thing that people get in trouble the most for is, you know, non-professionalism and related to missing deadlines. So just not submitting things on time. I mean, think about doing them, you know, all the work that you can, and then you know get something you know awful. So remember these are some important time parts of the timeline. Obviously June 7th is already passed for you there, and then you know September 6th residency applicants can begin to submit their ERAS. So I would say your goal is to try and get things in, you know, spend this Labor Day on getting things done, you know, as soon as possible, and then sorry, getting things in, you know, completing everything by Labor Day and getting things in September 6th if you can. And then uh, just have it out of the way, not really wait for things. And then, you know, May 31st, of course, the ERAS season ends, but that's way down the line. Probably the most important on this slide is September 6th. And then the NRMP has its own set of dates that are important. So, you know, you can start actually registering for the match September 15th. There, this is all available on their website. If you search NRMP important dates or, you know, deadlines or timeline, you'll be able to see these kinds of these numbers. So this is actually a truncated list of what they have available. And so I just kind of picked out some for probably the most important for us or most related to you all. So for the main residency match, you can start things at September 15th, and then January 31st. That's when you're able to. That's the last point that you can register for the match. So like keep that in mind. Like if you have, it's I mean it's super easy to do. Of course, you have to, you know, pay your pound of flesh. But if you don't do it by January 31st, like you're SOL, and that's a terrible thing to miss. So remember that date, super important. And then the following day, that's when you can start submitting your rank. So by February 1st, you know, you've done several interviews, and you're getting kind of to the tail end of the season if you're not already done. And then at the end of February, that's when you have to submit your rank list. So again, end of January, end of February, those should be probably like two of the most important. So sorry, September 6th, end of January, January 31st, and then end of February, January 28th. Those are probably three of the most important dates for you in terms of making sure you just don't miss something and get left out for like a goofy reason. So that would just be like terrible. And then pardon? Yeah.
From what we've been told with student affairs, the September 26th or whatever that day is, deadline is more critical than the September 6th. Is that true from your experience, from what you guys know? That just make sure we submit it by the day people are able to download it.
Yeah, I guess technically that would be the more like, important, like they can't see it until then. I don't know. I just if you have it done by then, there's no real reason to sit around it. I guess if you're waiting for something that's critical, or you're developing something that it makes sense to wait the week or two where your personal statement is coming together. If you want to make sure you have the best one, then yes. But I would just really keep that that submission, that ability to submit deadline in your mind.
You especially want to make sure that all of your rec letters are in by that September 27th, because if they come in after that, there's no guarantee that they'll even be looked at by the programs.
When your rec letters go in, so to my understanding, the programs can download, but if you put a letter in after that, it's not guaranteed to be downloaded. So if everyone downloads on one day and that letter is sent in, say, a week later, it may not be in your application. Even if you email program directors, because the first time I did that. Some of them say, we're sorry, but like everything's already been downloaded. We'll try to attach it, but it may not get attached to your application.
So critical. So September 6th critical, September 27th even more critical. So the two most critical dates on this are the ones that are not actually in boxes. So we'll work on that for next year's talk. And then the match week. So that's probably March 11. I think that's when you start. That's when you figure out if you have or haven't. And then from there you start thinking about hopefully all of us are fortunate on our talk here and who are listening. And then we're going into March 14, March 15 into it's a match day. That's a good time. So but by March 15, kind of this whole saga will be over. This go around, and we can talk about kind of next steps at a later date. But these are also important to keep in your head. So the data for 2023, I put an asterisk just because I think there's the charting outcomes data is not available until it's biannual, so it's not actually from this year. So yeah, so there are actually more. Last year there were more slots, more programs, so a few more open, and then more positions available for PGY1s. But probably the most troubling to all of us on this call is that actually there were fewer positions filled by US MDs compared to the percentage of positions were fewer filled by US MDs, US senior MDs than in years prior. So that just lets us know that there's probably a diversification of the applicants that are being accepted in terms of their MD, DO, and IMG status. So just I certainly being a US senior, MD senior is by far and away the has the best chance of matching, but things are changing, or things have been changing. So that's I think important to watch, even in the presence of more positions being available and more number of programs. And then last year we actually saw that there were a lot fewer applications, so a lot fewer applicants, a lot fewer applications per applicant, and then fewer programs receive fewer applications overall. I'm not really sure, I guess, what's sort of driving that trend, but
Signaling.
Yeah, it must be the signaling, right? So the fact that if you're only allowed to signal 30 places, right, you're not going to be doing 90 or over 100 as it may have been in the past. So for US, everyone across the board, just there were fewer applications sent out. So I think that obviously increases your chances you're someone. It's kind of a complex numbers game, but I think that overall fewer applicants and fewer applications, so better chances per person, I suppose. With the only difference here being that USMD seniors are actually more of them that applied. So probably maybe that explains why there were some there's a slight decrease in the percentage of them that enrolled. And then here we look at just kind of how your match status matched with the amount of programs you apply to, and the amount of orthopedic surgery programs that you ranked. And then we're starting to get into some of the Robert Wood Johnson data. So pretty much more than half of the ERAS applicants into ortho applied to greater than one orthopedic surgery program. And then similarly, a third of them ranked more than one orthopedic surgery program. I think, take that as you might. You see that at Robert Wood, there's we were higher up on the higher than the national average in terms of the number of people who ranked and applied to more than one orthopedic surgery program. Probably the more important, or the more kind of prognostic data, comes in the charting outcomes section. So this tells you, this is when we start comparing the matched applicants versus the unmatched applicants, and starting to understand essentially. This sort of, I thought, was the way when I was going through SENO, was how I sort of built the profile of who, quote unquote, who matches into orthopedics, and what that applicant looks like. So I think probably the most telling thing, a lot of people look at the AOA, I think is important, the abstracts, or the step one, but I think probably the most important thing is the number of ranks. So if you get more interviews and you rank more places, you're just more likely to match. It's just kind of right. I mean, if you look at the average step one, average step two, they're not markedly disparate between the people who match and the people who didn't match. The number of publications and abstracts, again, not markedly disparate. But the thing that sets people apart probably the most is the number of one, I guess, AOA, and then two, probably more importantly, is the number of ranks. Moving forward, again, we see the ranking versus not ranking. So if you had 16 or more ranks, right, those people were heavily going to match, and probably where the inflection point is in the box here, the 5 or 6 ranks. So kind of once you have fewer than 6, you're more likely more of those people did not match. And then as you got higher and higher, 7, 8, 9, I think when I was going through, there was a number like 7 or 8, I think, was the number for that was the quote unquote inflection point. And then I think everyone said, by 10 contiguous ranks, like it's more likely, much more likely than not. And then if you're up in the double digits, approaching 15, 20, right? Those are people who got the most interviews and went to the most places and ranked the most places. For one, I think it's just a marker of someone who is more liked, I guess, quote unquote, because they interviewed more. But other than that, it's just a numbers game. A lot of the time, it's just, even if you're well liked and you did well and people liked your interview, all you need to do is, if programs are 5 places, have 5 positions, all you need to do is be number 8 on the list enough times, and then calamity can strike, even if you're a great applicant. So kind of getting more and more ranks helps to make sure that you're less likely to fall into trouble, more than anything else. And then here's so kind of that thing I was talking to you about, the quote magic number and the probability of matching. So I think 5 kind of is, again, that inflection point where you're about half and half, right? So 5, 6 is where you jump to about the 50% match rate, and then it never really gets to 100%. There's never, there's always a chance, but after 10, 12, 13, you're really into a much more safe match position. So I think the match rate I think was 2/3 or just under. So if you look at the where 60 meets it, I think that was similar for my year, where they were saying 7 was the match, was a number to watch, because that's like the match rate. You had to have that many to be at the match rate. Your probability of matching to be at the match rate. So
I think for me, the biggest take-home points from this slide are, if you end up only getting 5 or 6 interview invites, you still have more than a fighting chance to match into an orthopedic residency. You just have to make one of them count. But on the flip side, if you have 12, 13, 14 interview invites, it's still no guarantee. You need to treat every single interview like it's your only interview.
Great point there, Todd. Thanks. And then here we look into the sort of some of the numbers games. So I guess is this the year that doesn't have step? Are you guys don't have step 1, or is that after you?
That's us.
That's you, right? Yeah. So so this is kind of not really so relevant to you anymore, at least for step 1. And the step 2 data is going to be really, really different when the next iteration of this charting outcomes data comes out. Usually, again, it's every 2 years. So you'll actually probably be the first class to actually fill out this charting outcomes data when there was no step 1. So probably I expect this statistic to become first time versus second time passers or something to that effect. For I think that'll be the way that they'll make something out of step 1 anymore. And then of course step 2 CK will be kind of the big number these days. Sort of to pose a question to the crowd, how valuable, I guess, was that, or how valuable has the leadership been telling you, or the mentors or people at other programs telling you that has become for you all? Step 2, that is.
I think for this year, they don't know what to make of it. I've heard that they're just going to raise their cutoff maybe 10 points higher, but traditionally their cutoff was relatively low.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, right. So we get rid of step 1, and step 2 just becomes the new step 1. So so we'll see how this data plays out. We'll see what it means. We'll get a better sense of what it means next year when you all fill out the survey after the match. And then again, so this data not so crucial anymore because of the the lack of step 1. But again, to Todd's point, nobody no score is high enough to guarantee you, and you really even with a quote low score near kind of the bottom range of what we used to think of for Ortho, you still quote have a fighting chance. So AOA is probably one of the bigger things, and we'll go over the RWJ matched applicants AOA percentage. But I think AOA is actually getting done away with at several prominent programs, because there's some concern that there's some bias in the way that the AOA selection is done, and so it's no longer, or if it's not being done away at certain programs, the way that students are selected has at least been changing. I know that that's true at Virginia. They definitely revamped some of the ways that they were picking the members and picking the members of the AOA. So if you have it, great. If you don't have it, you still are in a decent place. So I was an AOA. I matched. So there's that. So RWJMS 2023. So this is where we went last year. I think we went kind of all over the country. Probably most notably from the slide. You all probably know Curran, Paul, Dane all came back here. So we had a class of a trio from Robert Wood here at the institution. Now that's probably that's not the norm here, and I don't think that's the norm at most places. You know, just kind of how the cookie crumbled. I mean, they were really good guys, so so we're glad to have had them. But as you saw, we have people who went kind of all over, as far as Texas, as high up as into the Mayo Clinic, right, and to go freeze in Minnesota, and people went all around. So definitely a good haul from our crew this year. And so again, some of the numbers that probably aren't, or maybe some that are relevant, some aren't. The step one, not being so pertinent, but then talking about going into step two, looking at that and seeing how that played out in terms of the matched applicants. So I think it was 11 of our 14 match. So you know, if you 250, kind of that 245 to 260 range is looking like the numbers, at least from RWJ, that it took to match in terms of step two. So if that's becoming more and more valuable, you probably, you know, again, with that slide with the with that little curve, no numbers too high, but and even quote lower numbers are still have a good chance. So there's a lot that goes into your application. Very few of us from here who matched ended up going into the AOA. But again, so less than half of the matched applicants had to get into and no gold humanism honors, which again is another society that can be kind of some have at least said that maybe there's some, you know, systematic faults in the way that the students are selected. So, but no gold humanism awards, and still we made it 11 to 14 match rate. So looking into the application specifics and the details of the application, right? Talking about the mean number of work experiences, the mean number of volunteer experiences, and then again the mean number of research experiences. I think that one of the things that you probably should note here is that the students who had a research year really weren't, you know, that much different from the students who didn't take a research year this year. Last year it looks like there is a little bit more disparate, but it seems like that really wasn't that much of a difference. I know that a lot of students ask me often, you know, and of course this is a little bit late, you know, to be talking about research, but a lot of students asking about, you know, the value of a research year and why they should do it. And, you know, I always tell them that it should never be something that's going, you know, if you think that your application is you know, totally quote broken or just not the best it can be, a research year doesn't necessarily fix that. I think it's important to do if that's something that you value, research, and something that you want to have in your career. And it's a good way to show programs that, you know, you're willing to take that time out to out of your you know, take an extra year in your studies to dedicate to that, to show programs like, hey, I'm really interested in doing research, not just at your program, but also in my career and contributing to the field in that way. I think that that's the best way to use it, to augment your kind of a feather in the cap of your application as opposed to something that'll help to just to pull it up. I think that obviously it can, especially if, you know, you're someone who started a little bit later in the orthopedic course, and, you know, maybe it can be helpful just for you to get more experience in orthopedics, not just in research but shadowing. But I don't think it can be it's not necessarily the panacea that I think people can sometimes think it is.
I think that the data, I don't even understand why they report this data, because the number of experiences that you've had in any of these categories is completely meaningless. So like maybe you worked in one research lab for 10 years and like, why is that less valuable? Like, I don't think any programs are going in there and counting how many of these experiences you've had in each scenario. They're just looking at the specific experiences that you do have and publications. So I would not look at your application and say, oh shit, I'm below the average number of volunteer experiences, and feel like you're not going to do well. Anything you put on your application that's meant to be there just for fluff is going to get pointed out somewhere. So don't add extra stuff just to make your numbers look better.
So we actually can
I
only
think-
have
I
10
think-
experiences now
Yeah.
total.
That's excellent news. It should be 5, honestly.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely, you know, people can suss out the fluff, and if you didn't value something or didn't, you know, put a lot of work into it, people know. So, and they'll look for it and they'll see it and then they'll ask you about it and then they'll know. So, yeah, I definitely like the cap. I guess that's just what they're going for all around, capping with the signaling, capping the amount of research, you know, experiences, kind of streamlining the application, forcing you to sort of put your best foot forward instead of just, you know, kind of word vomiting.
The only thing they haven't capped is the number of applications you could send in, because then they would lose money.
Yeah, they can't do that. They probably, you know, I think that a reasonable cap might end up being just like, you know, number of positions, right? Or you know, I think they'll, you know, with enough of this data, they'll see that after a certain number of positions, it doesn't make a difference for you, and they'll probably start going that direction. But we'll see. TB, you know, that's just speculation. So again, research experiences. We kind of spoke about that. So then away rotations, letter of recs. So the away rotation data is like, you know, I mean, obviously that's completely thrown by, you know, the whole COVID thing. Obviously, you know, we're coming out of that now, but I don't know how valuable this is from 2023. And then looking into the letters of rec, it seems like it just fewer letters of rec were written on average. That's by the RWJMS faculty. You know, the toughest thing, I think it should be pointed out though that each year, obviously, it's harder to get letters of rec from non-RWJ. So people who are, you know, not at your home institution, it's just harder to get good letters. You don't spend enough time.
2022, they can only do one away rotation.
Yeah, right. So you can only get one. You can only do so many, right? And then the same. I mean, even with more away rotations in 23, like the average is still about the same with a very similar range. So it's just harder to get that. I think some people think of it as a good way to show that you've done well on the rotation, or you know, any of those things. But I think that, quite frankly, if you have personnel at your institution, so at Robert Wood, who are willing to back you, who know you well, I think that does just that. That'll do just as well as kind of a big name person. So I think that's what people go for often when they get the letters from outside. So yeah, so again, sorry, kind of still going into the weeds of the data. I'll just kind of point out the most important, what I think is the most important bit of info. So with regards to signaling, right? If you don't signal, like you don't get, you're just, you know, it's much less likely for you to get an interview, right? So if here at Robert Wood, I think the practice, I don't know, you know, I can't say this officially or not. I don't know this word of mouth, but I don't know if they interview people who don't signal the program. So, so that's, you know, so it's, I mean, it's crucial. And I think it's just a way it's kind of their soft way to try and decrease the number of applications. And it worked, as we saw, you know, from slides before. And then again, you can see that amongst Robert Wood students, right? There are just fewer applications overall, because if you know that signaling is crucial, right? I mean, it literally decreased in 30. So from 1 year to the next. And then you know, I think that the most consistent thing is people who get interviews, they kind of go on all of them, right? So the average interviews in 22, 14, and then 14 and 22, and then a number of interviews attended 14, and then 11.6 interviews offered and 10.8. So almost the same amount in terms of the average number of interviews offered versus attended. So again, that all goes back to the more contiguous ranks, the more likely you are to match. So Yeah. And then of course, again, everyone who went somewhere ranked somewhere. So, and then this just looks into kind of how many people got in their top rank, their top one or top two. So 2/3 roughly each year got into their top one, number one and number two. And again, 70%, so 2/3, just over 2/3 got into their number one or number two. So the Robert Wood students seem to do very well in terms of their rank lists. So maybe they don't have to rank 11 places, but they do. So good. And then again here, the away invitations. So there are more, obviously, as we come out of COVID, there will be more away rotations, and this away rotation data will start to change. So, but I think that probably the most important thing for us to know now that we're stepping out of the COVID area is that let's remember that places that you rotate at, they know you best, right? So it's more than just a single interview, and I think you're probably always going to be more somewhere that you rotated versus. Okay, so advice. I think we spoke, about this when we talked about the dates, but it's never too early to start your personal statement. Get your CV in order. Make sure everything is everything that's on your application. And you have to know everything that these application. I think that the ERAS can be a good thing because it sort of streamlines the application process and it makes it so that you don't really have to, think about after you've plugged and chugged. But it can be a bad thing because you don't think, and so you can miss things and not end up knowing where you need to, what you need to do in terms, or you may not keep track of all the things that you need to have. I'm trying to remember. I don't know, Todd, if you can remember anything was weird in terms of like application requirements for you when you were applying. I don't really remember for
yeah, I mean, is this important? It's important to know the supplemental, which ones require supplemental personal statement or application. I remember NYU required a separate personal statement. Maybe Virginia or something wanted a supplemental application. I think there's more of that now. And then you need to look at every program's website and see some of them only want 3 rec letters, some of them specifically want 4, some of them say 3 to 4, some of them say 3+. So don't get caught sending the wrong number of rec letters to the program. And then also keep in mind that you can choose which programs you're sending which rec letters to. And you don't have to send, just because you got a rec letter from someone doesn't mean you need to use it, and doesn't mean you need to use it every single place. For instance, like I got a rec letter from an attending here when I did an away rotation here, and I only used that one in the tri-state area because I didn't think that people outside of the tri-state area would know them. And that was a personal decision, but it's just something to consider.
Yeah, so great advice there. Thanks, Todd. And then, yeah, so I think probably again salient point here, and I think people took this advice, right? So we all saw that the average number of applications were was way more than 30, even after the signaling era. So people are applying to more programs than they signal, and I think that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to just apply to 30 programs. Although, as we start figuring out the signal thing more and more, it people only really got 2 applications from 2 interviews from places that they didn't signal. So we may even see that the non-signal programs may be whittling down further and further. So make sure your application is thorough but concise, so that people can kind of get through it, have a good sense of you, and just make a decision about whether they'll interview you or not. And then these are, again, you know, just highlighting the thing that's that's so important in is that there's just a lot of paperwork with this, right? You've been doing paperwork for a ways, you're gonna keep doing more and more paperwork, but slipping here is like, it's just it would just be terrible to not get through this whole thing because you missed on you goofed on some of the paperwork of it. So just keeping track of all the things that you need. Probably again, one of the harder ones, if you're not keeping up with it, can be your CV, because things kind of get all over the place and you may find yourself scrambling late on. So if you haven't already, definitely start compiling and reviewing and thinking about all the things and thinking about the best way you want to put everything in the CV. And if I remember correctly, the ERAS design is, it's actually kind of it's kind of annoying because you have to upload your own CV, but you also have to upload it and add descriptions in their formatting. So it actually doesn't, it's not actually, just so straightforward and quick. It actually does take a little bit. So having all these things, or having a plan for all these things in order is definitely good to have, around that September 6th date.
That's good.
What's that?
I was for the last slide. Does anyone know about the supplemental ERAS application? Has anyone seen what that entails? Is it specific for orthopedics, or is it? I'm just not clear on what that is.
I think that's what what we spoke about before with regarding having just different programs may having different extra things that they may ask you to do. So like Todd said, at UVA, and I remember this UVA, you have to ask it. They asked like a why UVA, which I don't know if they do that anymore, but when I was applying, they did.
And does all that get submitted through ERAS still?
Yeah. Oh well. Sorry.
No.
A few years ago,
Paul,
yes.
you might have the best answer to this.
Yeah, sorry.
So all those, I know UVA still has one. A large majority of the programs, I thought it was only going to be one or two, still have them. But they will tell you exactly how to submit it. Some will say you submit it to a program coordinator. Some will say you submit it to like a special email. And even in some, they'll say exactly how to title the documents and how, like, it'll be like last name dot first name, and then a year sometimes, and exactly how to put the format of the, what do you call it? The title of the email. So just read all of them thoroughly so that you see which ones you have to send and how you should send it.
Can I also ask a question? So AOA is moving to like a standardized letter of recommendation, and they encourage to not saying like a narrative letter of recommendation. Does anybody what should we do? Should we like have both, or should we like just have that standardized letter of recommendation? It's a new thing for 2023. I'm not sure if anybody have like a good stand on this.
Yeah, everyone that I talked to is saying that so if you use the standard one, you can't go wrong. And in the bottom of the standard letter, they can upload the narrative. So the standard letter will be similar to like the way that they currently rank you for your rotations, where there's a checkbox, Likert score, and then at the bottom there's an area for comments. And in that supplemental bottom portion, they can upload a letter, like an actual letter itself, into that, and that whole form will go as a standard letter form when you submit your letters.
Right. But I'm just so I just want to confirm. I think the standard letter from last year and this year is slightly different. That's why I'm not sure if we can just submit the whole in the bottom form. Like I know there's like a comment section from last year, and I think this year that there's a 2 boxes. Like I forgot what it is like in the back. If anybody, I just want to know what my classmates doing to see if you guys know. I don't want like because they in their page, the page where you download PDF, they specifically say they want to discourage any kind of narrative personal statement. That's why I'm worried about it. If I like just copy and paste that into it, or have someone to do it, just not sure if anybody have a good like, idea about it.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know too much other than
what I did. Yeah,
Just do the standard letter.
just do the send letter. Because yeah, it was so confusing because this is the first time they're doing that. Yeah, thank you though. Thank you so much.
All right. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Right. So, know yourself, know your application. So all those things. So I think probably picking the program, and picking where you interview or where you apply to is kind of tough. So and picking how you end up ranking places is kind of tough. But these are in general, and these things haven't changed since I was doing the application. So right, thinking about where, right, location, has to be either somewhere you know or somewhere you want to be. Usually, heavily on people's mind is having family nearby. I will say anecdotally, you work a lot in residency, and I feel like I've seen my parents who are in the state now as much as when I was out of state. So, hindsight is good, as I say at Freshman Conference, but maybe that should or shouldn't play. Depends on kind of your relationship with that, and then. Familiarity, so where you rotated is obviously important, right? So if you like somewhere that you rotated, and you thought that you did a good job there, they should definitely be on your application list. And then quality of programs, so not just hard to tell. Zoom interviews is often hard to tell, just based on their website. I mean, they kind of all end up saying some version of the same thing. So I think that's probably one of the tougher things, and it's something that you really only figure out once you're at an interview, and especially if you're at an in-person interview. So, and then you have to when you're thinking about the granularly. So that usually gets you a big batch of places. But then granularly, you want to think like, should I go? Is this even a program that I want to be at? Will they interview me? I sort of disagree with the first bullet point. I always think of it as, look, let them decide not to interview me, not I shouldn't decide that they won't interview me. So that's sort of my philosophy on that. But then the others I think are important. Like, do I am I just sending this application in because I feel I need to, or is this actually a place that I want to go to? If they call me, am I gonna cancel my whatever appointment to make that interview? Is it gonna be important to me? And then would I want to match there, obviously, which I think is important to consider, but probably something you can't make the decision on until you've actually done interviews. And then would I be happier matching here or waiting a year? Again, tough to tell until you're actually there, in person or in Zoom, and a little bit more about the place. So personal statements, and again, this has been information that's been told to me, and in large part, it seems like it really just hasn't changed since then. And in fact, I'm also applying for fellowship on a relatively similar timeline as you guys. So I'll be doing much of the same thing in my own personal statement, right? Just make it like normal and don't be last minute about it. And what we mean by make it normal means it doesn't need to be a masterful work of literature, right? It's not like a fiction story. It's not a book. It's just why it's about you personally, right? It's about your ambition. It's about what you hope to gain as a resident, why you want to do what you're doing. So I think one person said motivation, aspiration, perspiration. So like why you want to do it, what you hope you'll accomplish, and the work you've done that has got you to this point, or gotten you to the point where you're to do what you're doing. So maybe that could be, maybe someone will use that and quote, but just definitely it should be short, like one page. I've heard an anecdote from someone who I'm pretty close to, who said, if it was more than one page, like, I just didn't look at it. And I remember, when I was doing the admissions for the medical students coming, I read all the applications, but if it was 2 pages, even if it was good, I just kind of, I was, I don't know, I wanted one. So definitely, just keep it to one page. Make sure you proof the heck out of it. You know, it, it's like this is like what I used to tell people who ask for advice. This is really, really high value real estate because pretty much everyone who when people review your application, they may not look at every single detail of work experiences, right? They may not look, but they're definitely gonna read this. So like this is your chance um um to talk to the program. So take it really seriously and follow this advice. Letters of rec. So the whole e-score thing was coming into use when I was applying, and people still really didn't know if they had to use it, we didn't have to use it. This is something that we needed or did. And so really, I'll be honest with you, I don't have the best advice on that. Maybe, maybe Paul or you Mike can try and tell us what they know about. But as far as the other parts of this slide, so those things remain true, right? The more someone knows you, the better the letter is going to be. The more they feel like they want you to win, right? The more they want to, if this person feel like there's someone who invests in you, like they'll sponsor you and they'll they'll go to for you, and that's crucial because when I would read letters of rec, like that's what I wanted to see, like would you put all the chips down for this person? And so that's kind of what you want to hear in your letters of rec, and then try to get at least one letter from every away rotation. I think that's one, it's not, as I say, it's not always possible. Two, I think more than actually getting the letter, probably the more important thing is that as if you're trying to get a letter from a place or someone, you have a very short time to be very, very impressive, and I think that'll actually set you up for more success than if you do or don't get a letter from somewhere. So yeah, again, in my experience, it's just really like it's just not easy to do. You just don't spend that much time with people, and so it can be tough. But yeah, and then the last one, I think when I was applying, it was UCSF. That was on my list of places I applied to that required a letter from a non-ortho surgeon. I just didn't apply because I didn't have them. So so I just ended up, I didn't apply it there. But if you do have someone who's not an ortho surgeon who's willing to write you a letter, it may be good to have. Like Todd, said, you don't have to send every letter to every program. So maybe useful there.
The additional thing I would say about the letters is, if you feel like you can ask someone for a letter on your away rotations, just do it, because you can't go back and do it in hindsight, 2 months later when your application's going, or I guess a month later when your application's going in. And you could always choose not to send it to places if you don't think it's going to be as good as your other letters. But if you get a letter from an away rotation, make sure you send that letter to that program when you apply there, because that's not a great look otherwise.
I will say with regards to I guess that's the e-slore and the conventional letter. I noticed that some programs will say we only accept the standardized one. Some say they accept conventional and standard, but almost nowhere will not accept the e-slore one, the standardized one. So that I just stuck to doing everyone asking them for standardized ones, because you can submit those blanketly across the board. And then if you're on an away rotation, sometimes, for most rotations, they're going to be 2 weeks that you're going to spend per service. And so if you think you're going to ask someone for a letter, it's nice if after a week, we maybe give that attending a heads up, and say, something to the tune of like, I really enjoy working with you. I'd like, over the next week, if you feel like you can write me a strong letter of recommendation, would you feel comfortable? And then sometimes what will happen is they'll spend more time and focus on you, ask you some more questions in the OR so they get to know you better, so they can actually write a letter that's more reflective of who you are rather than just a generalized letter.
All excellent points. Thanks again, guys, for supporting me here. Next, so again, more on recommendation letters. I think, very important for us to kind of talk a lot about these because again, as scores start going away, as they start, really streamlining the application, the quality of these pieces that have been sort of, pillars in the application process becomes more and more important. So yeah, chair plus 2 or 3 additional letters, right? So I think that's how it was when I was doing as well. Is most places wanted 3 or 4 letters, and I think when I did my applications, I definitely had 1 or 2 that sort of went different places based on connection. I was like behind my computer with an Excel sheet, just going crazy, praying files. But one of the things that people always talk about, like, oh, if you have a big name, right, like that's good. But often, as a student, you probably don't spend a lot of time with the big names, and so the letter quality isn't as good. And then but you may spend a lot of time with kind of another attending who would be more likely to go to bat for you, but doesn't necessarily have the big name at the end of it. Orthopedics is a small enough field where, everyone kind of does know everyone. So I guess the name, then, ideally, if you could just get a great letter from a big name, that would be like, fantastic. But you just you can't always do that. I think that for me, my bias is to have someone like go to bat for me, even if they don't necessarily know a lot of people, because, if when you are a big name, a lot of people end up knowing you. And what I think would be the worst thing would be, say Dr. Gatt knows the obviously he's a chair, so that's not a good example. But say, one of the other attendings that you ask knows an attending or 2, or is familiar with the attendings at a few of the places that you go. If your letter doesn't sound great, I mean, they almost take that person. Oh, I know X, Y, and Z really well. And he doesn't. This sounds like a very basic letter. So I think that would be worse. Even if they're a big name person, than getting like a letter where people are able to go to bat for you. So, and obviously the letter readers know this, right? So they're gonna see the big name and then see average types of comments. They're like, oh, okay, well, I know this. So, no one's that famous in orthopedics that you can get by with just having a letter. Don't wait till too late. And again, don't ask someone. So again, the whole mediocre letter from a big name. Don't ask someone who's you've barely been around. Make sure you keep people on time. I'm also juggling the same dilemma right now, right? Because you want to get these people to take time out of their days to do this for you, but you also don't want to be annoying. So you definitely try to get your letters in, so you can just sign and seal that application, just be like done with that part, because it can really ride on you. Ask a guy who knows. Pray that mentors write you a good one. Yeah, right. So and then these are just kind of the some other parts of the application. So again, I think probably the most important thing here is like, yeah, don't just put random stuff. And again, you guys are saying that they're capping the number of experiences and all those things that you can do. Like, be short, be to the point. People just don't have like a ton of time, even though they're getting less applications per program. Now, 700 applications per program is still a lot of applications per program. So just kind of be to the point. Make sure you talk about stuff that you do. I think I remember I included one of my hobbies was I like made like these like they're around the house somewhere, but I do like this wire sculpting thing, and people always ask about it. It's like the only thing people, well, what is that? I've never seen that. I would show them, and so they knew. But if you don't do that, or you can't talk about it, right? People would get really specific and ask like, what size wire, what are your tools, what are your instruments? So you just have to, if you do something, like, know it. And then work experience is nothing before college. Again, quality over quantity. It's just, just one thing that I thought was important when I thought of this section was, trying to tailor a narrative. So I did, so when I was applying to residency, you know, I did in college, I did, as we all did, like a million activities. But one of the things that was a thread to me was I was a teaching assistant for chemistry and anatomy, and I really liked teaching. I thought that that was like an important part of me that I wanted to share, and so I reached back to to make sure those things were included, and then I was more sparing about other things. So you can be selective in those things, and again, kind of tailor that narrative. Supplemental applications. So again, right, some things are you can when they most of them are just gonna, I think I don't know, Todd, if you know at Robert Wood if we're still doing a supplemental app. I know they used to ask a question like why New Jersey or why Robert Wood, something like that. And so basically, again, this is sort of how they're like this was like a pre-signaling kind of way to signal, like, can you talk about New Jersey or why you even want to be around here? So I think that that's important. Again, people usually lean on, again, geographic personal preferences regarding family. Like, I'm from the Northeast. I like the Northeast. This is where I went to school. I really love it, and I want to be, all those things. So, and again, program signaling. So again, like, I don't know, I think I've said this now coming up in the third time, so it's probably important, right? The thing that gets people, the thing that would be like a shame to lose out on is if you goof on just requirements. So just paperwork is, I'm sorry, you're in medicine, like paperwork is gonna haunt you like forever. And it's gonna be the bane of you, and it's gonna be the thing that like trips you up. You can be a great applicant, but if you don't have all the stuff in there, then you just, if you don't check the boxes, I mean, it's literally a completion grade for some of this stuff, and you just have to do it. So make sure that you think about all these things that each program needs, and figure out some way. Like I said, I use Excel, but you think about some way to like make this make it make sense in your head, whether it's OneNote or Evernote, or you have a chalkboard or something. But you just have to have a way that you'll keep these programs in some organized fashion, and it'll become important to you, especially after you start interviewing and you have to take notes. And we'll talk about the interviewing, I think, at another talk. But
and kind of going off the organization thing, I don't know if you guys have joined it. I don't have the new link, but there is a Google Docs link that is like all of the ortho students across the country kind of dump information into this doc. And it's a great opportunity for you to look and see, they'll say like, oh, this program needs this supplemental, or this program wants a tailored personal statement. And so you can kind of go through and you can update it, but you can also look at it and say, okay, have I checked off all these boxes and, done what each of the programs is asking.
Yeah, so that's a good resource for that objective data. Just if anything subjective about the programs you see on there, take with a grain of salt, because they don't always know what they're talking about.
And yes, so next, so that's kind of all our advice, our stats. Hopefully at least some of that was helpful. Thank you guys for sitting through it. We'll come again and talk about interview advice again once we're kind of closer to the deadline. I'll try and get some knowledge about the whole how they're doing, the universal interview data and so forth. And then we'll talk about rank list, and we'll talk more about that things being due, and we'll bring back that timeline from the beginning, and what to do, and who to call, et cetera, et cetera. So in conclusion, don't believe anything I don't do. Know yourself, know your application. You think that goes without saying, but like you really just have to know. You should be able, if someone starts reading a line from your app, you should be able to finish the line. I mean, obviously not to that, but you really should know everything that's on there, because it's all a fair game. People ask you like literally anything that you said, because they just, they're talking to you, they've met you for the first time. Some people will be like unbelievably interested in some of the things. I remember I was on a paper about mycobacterium, and I interviewed with someone who took care of a patient who got a mycobacterium. And I mean, this guy was like so interested in. He was telling me about the details of this X fix and the what. And so you just have to and how he treated it, and he was asking me how I would treat it. And like, was like, oh man, I really kind of just know what the paper says because I just know what my mentors talk about. But he wanted to talk about it and he was happy with that. So you just have to know everything that's going to be on there. And then make sure make sure you listen to everything that I'm saying. But again, right, I always give you a little disclaimer, like some of it is antiquated. We have a lot of input here from people from different times in their and different perspectives. Hopefully I'll give you a good set of advice. But just remember we're not the end all be all. We don't know everything. Make sure you know the programs, right? People are gonna ask you flat out, why do you want to be here? And quite frankly, that's like an easy question, but it should be. I mean, it should be something that and it should be something that kind of rolls off the tongue and something that helps you. It's not just helpful for them; it's helpful for you because if you really can't think about why you want to go there, or what about this program is exciting to you, or then maybe not one that's too high up for you. And then so I think that a lot of the times we just people think you have to apply to a million, you have to rank all these programs. You must do that, do what you think is going to be right for you, not necessarily what everyone is quote unquote supposed to do. Doximity rank, Doximity is garbage. If you don't if programs just don't do it, their ranking falls. So you just can't trust it fully, or it doesn't really mean anything much. And then OrthoGate is like I mean, if you've ever been there, you know what's going on there. And then amongst the class, we didn't talk much about this, but amongst classmates, and this was something that was huge for us when I was in med school, was we had like a group chat. We knew where everyone was going. We had all the insider information. If I did an interview before, like we shared immediately, how it went, what the faculty were like, all that's important. And then you cannot step on each other's toes. And not hurt each other, hurt each other's chances at places. So definitely crucial there.
If any program ever asks you about one of your fellow med students, you're only allowed to say positive things.
I mean, yeah, if it's not like swimming, like a glowing
positive
statement,
positive or neutral.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to like it's your colleague, right? So just you just be collegial. Like that's what people are looking for, is like collegiality. That's who it's best to work with, people who are collegial. So thoughts, questions, comments?
This might be hard to answer since it's a little new, but with the 30 programs to signal, is there any kind of general advice on going about that? Of course, like we'll probably signal the places we've rotated at and that type of thing, but kind of beyond that, when you get into like the 15, 20, 25, down the list, what might we think about? What are some of the considerations?
Yeah, right. So good question. I think that's what the whole point of signaling is to stop that shotgun approach, right? Just apply everywhere and just throw your application, right? It's to force you to think about that beforehand. So I think all those things that I mentioned previously, right? So geography, like if you're if you don't want to live in Nebraska, dude, like don't apply. Like don't signal the program in Nebraska, right? Like that's not where you're from. You're right. So right. So geography is important. Understanding like if your family ties, or if you're someone who's you maybe recently married, or you have a kid and you want to be near family so they can help, that may be important, right? So understanding your own situation and what you need personally. But then also looking at, I mean, obviously there are things that programs carry. So size of the program may be important to you. If reputation is really important to you, that would be like of value, right? You want to signal like the programs that have whatever conglomerate of what's really valuable to you. If you hear that this place is a more quote blue collar, white collar program, if you're concerned that, oh, I don't want to be in this city setting, I like the countryside, I want the do they have a level 1 trauma center, what's their outpatient surgical experience, all those things are probably things that you can find out with some, there's going to always be some ambiguity, but with some specificity online and from peers, from some of those that like spreadsheet I think Paul was talking about. But those are all the things that you have to take into consideration now. So that's the point of the signaling. It's just like think about it now before you send like 100 applications is basically what they're trying to get you to do.
The bottom line is that no one can help you make your 30 signal list. You just have to do some introspection and research and figure out which places you cannot do without.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you come to your senior list, you're like, oh man, like I really need this one on it, you know, then you start thinking, okay, well, which ones can I do without and which ones can't I? So
And no one else is allowed to have opinions on what you put on your top 30.
yeah, that's up to you. Like not even like, you're like one thing I'll say, just you kind of have to be selfish in this segment here. Like it has to be about you because if if it's not, and then you make decisions for other people, right, and you're not in love with it, like like boo hoo. So
Paul and Mike, do you guys have anything you want to add from all this?
It'll be nice to be home for a bit.
I have nothing. The only thing that I would say that's kind of important to think about is with regards to the match process. Really looking introspectively towards your application. If there's any thought that you may be interested, in any other field, and thinking like you may want to apply into it, if you do apply after, say, you didn't match, your application is looked at as a secondary application, regardless of the fact that it's your first time applying into it that time. So say, for example, you went through the process this time, you don't match, and then you apply into, say, Gen Surge next time, your application is looked at as a secondary time applying, regardless of the fact that it's your first time applying into Gen Surge. So if you have any thought that you may want to apply into another field and you're just sort of thinking, oh, I'll do ortho this time. If I don't match, I'll apply next time. It may be worth taking some intake and saying, maybe it's worth putting it on your application this time or applying to it this time, and then just ranking those programs below ortho, because you probably will have a better chance of getting into a better tier or like a program of your choice for Gen Surge than if you say you did it in your second time around.
I would strongly advise not doing that unless you really are concerned about your chances in ortho, because when you dual apply for orthopedics and something else, your odds of matching an ortho like plummet. So because you can't put 100% of your focus on it. So if you're going to consider doing that, consider it very carefully.
yeah, I would tend to echo Todd on that one. I see what you're saying there, Paul, but definitely like if you stat after stat after stat, like dual applicants, like they end up in more trouble, and the reason is for what Todd said. You just can't put enough emphasis. I mean, I just spoke for like 90 minutes about like doing this on one aspect of the whole application process. So imagine duplicating that across like multiple specialties. So it'd be very, very challenging. So like I think to Paul's point, introspection is key.
Yeah, I haven't exactly looked at all the statistics. I have an N of 1 of myself. So if that is, what Todd and Jomar are saying, then please disregard what I just said. Yeah, thank you.
Well, what you said is true. It's just that the other stuff's also true.
The only thing I would add, or it's not really even add, is just to reemphasize the point that's been made several times, which is do not put anything on your application that you're not comfortable being asked in extreme detail about. And you'll hear from every single person multiple stories about, thank God I remembered that or reviewed that the day before, because who could have thought that the interviewer I had was going to ask me the entire time about this one minor facet of my application. And I've heard from people in programs as well that the way that they see their interview is to fact check the applications. So don't make that mistake now, because pretty much I've never heard anyone who did it who got away with it.
True. Echo. Yeah, just make it about you. Like you can't. Like you've done so much stuff. Trust me, you can fill up the application, and even if you can't, it's probably okay. Like
Look, and you don't want to short sell yourself. Like obviously you have to put stuff down accurately, but I think it always looks better when you put something that's bare bones factual on there, and then they start asking you about it, and you can expand on it and show that, well, in fact, you not only is this a legitimate thing, but it's even stronger perhaps than they might have gotten the impression of, as opposed to the other way around where you try to sell something out like it's really impressive, and then it's going to get found out. They're going to find out how much you really care about it and how much you really know. And
Right.
if it's the other way around, you look like an absolute stud, and then everything else in your application, they're like, oh man, he said this, but I bet you he's even better at that too, or whatever the case may be.
Right. You're building credibility really fast. Like, they have very little time to understand who you are. So again, the application, personal statement, high value real estate. The application, it's all high value real estate because this is how you get your foot in the door. So
I gotta get going, but thanks for running this, Jomar. Paul and Mike, thanks for joining. Jomar will send out the recording for the people who missed it.
that was good. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. Hope this is helpful. Take everything with a grain of salt. Drive your own. You're the captain now of your own ship.
Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Joma, can I ask you a quick question?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. When are we? So I'm finishing up my home rotation now. So when is a good time to ask for